Why hello there, how are you today? Awesome Soul here, and welcome back to another drone discussion. This time we are taking a look at the trailer that was just released, the Arena Editor number 5, focusing on objects. There were many interesting points made throughout this video, and I will be going through all of them and basically giving my thoughts on how each of these are going to impact the final game as a whole. So to start off with, there are going to be two types of objects, static and dynamic objects, and possibly a third one in the future, but I'll get to that in a second. So, what differentiates the static and dynamic objects? Static objects are fixed, so you basically mount these objects on walls, such as light poles, or wall lights, or panels, etc, etc. These parts cannot be moved by the player, i.e. being shot at or being bumped into. They will stay glued in place. Dynamic parts, on the other hand, are actually affected by physics. So all the parts you see that are being sort of dropped and moving around after they've been dropped, those are dynamic. So what the player can do with these is they can actually use their weapons to fire at them. So if you have a high impact type weapon like a shotgun or some sort of explosive weapon, you're probably going to send these things flying pretty far. Whereas if you had a laser weapon, it's probably not going to have as much of an impact. Now, one thing I was thinking about doing when it comes to map design, once this game is actually released of course, is that I was planning on doing some sort of secret hidden area on some of my maps, or maybe some kind of tunnel that leads from one half of the base to another half of the base, but it's kind of hidden. So they basically confirmed that you can actually do this in the game. So with these dynamic objects, you can shoot them out of the way, and maybe it'll reveal a hidden ventilation system that will lead you to a really good vantage point, for example. What I'm also personally hoping for are parts that can be destroyed. So dynamic objects that are sort of just laying on the ground, maybe bits of scrap metal or wooden crates or something like that. If you shoot out the crate for long enough, depending on how powerful your weapon is, maybe one hit will be enough to take it out. But it'll take it out and reveal what's behind it. Or of course, you could just knock it out of the way. Now, the object bar that you have been seeing throughout the trailer is, one, a work in progress. I need to reiterate that for those who are sort of just joining us now and haven't seen the other videos I've done. They are planning on improving this or reworking it. But the other thing is that every object you see in that little bar is just a work in progress. These are things that they're only using to sort of test out the engine, and a lot more things will be added in the future. My guess is they're eventually going to come up with a new editor where it's going to be sort of like a drop-down system based item bar, where you can hit one sort of drop-down list and it'll say wall decorations, for example, or panels. There you go, wall panels. And then another one would say lights, and then you could hit the light button and it would come up with like 20 different lighting options, or boxes, etc, etc. You know, you get the idea. Just to sort of make it less cluttered. That's what I'm hoping they do anyway. The other thing they do want to add is the ability to paint objects. So as you've seen throughout the trailer, certain objects already have paint on them. There's ones that are sort of bright orange, for example. In the future, you would be able to paint these different colors, or possibly use the same texture system that they have for the blocks. That would be kind of interesting. I have seen one of the, I think it looks like a shipping box, kind of, like one of the smaller shipping boxes that you can actually fly into. Those actually have the, what I assume is the default texture of the blocks on it. So it would make sense if that's using the same texture as the block texture, then you could paint that and it would match up, hopefully. Though I can definitely see it would be a lot easier to use some of the textures on certain things. If you've got like a really, really bumpy object, then that probably wouldn't work for textures. Maybe you would just stick with the painting on that one. But yeah, all that's really cool. So you could have one base where it's all, you know, red team focused. So you got red boxes everywhere. And then on the other side, it's all blue team focused. So you've got, you know, big blue boxes. Say that 10 times fast. And something that should be rather obvious to most, but dynamic objects can be easily stacked on one another. So it's not going to be like this weird janky system where they kind of float on top of each other. It works perfectly fine. Although I would expect that to work. I don't see why it wouldn't, but they brought that up in the trailer, so I figured I would make a point out of it. Now, remember back to the beginning of the video where I said there were 2 types of objects, but they might add a 3rd. And it certainly sounds like they will actually add this thing. It's not a might, it's more of a when. At least that's the impression that I got. And that would be functional/moving parts are planned. So what do they mean by this? Well, they mean switches that you can hook up to doors, giant ventilation systems with spinning rotors, hydraulic presses, etc, etc. And then you can use these to make traps, which would be really awesome. Something else that's kind of cool that I just thought of is hooking those switches up to the ventilation system and the hydraulic presses. So what you could do here is fly through like a hallway, for example, and then come out on the other side, quickly press a button, and the hydraulic presses would crush down, either killing anyone inside the tunnel or blocking that tunnel off so they couldn't actually get to you, and they would have to go around another way in order to kill you. That would be really cool. And sort of going into the whole ventilation system idea, assuming this thing is really, really large, I could see it being the size of maybe like 9 blocks, maybe 4 blocks. Maybe there'd be different sizes, but what it seems like is they're going to allow you to fly through these spinning blades, and maybe they'll have slow spinning ones or fast spinning ones, so you can't really get through them unless you maybe hit a switch, for example. But with the slower spinning ones, you could take your chances. You could try and fly through it, or you would hit one of the blades and explode. It probably wouldn't be spinning fast enough to actually kill you. It's just if you hit one of the blades head on, you're probably going to have a bad time. More than likely, if you had a really light drone, that would be the end of you. But I know that the functional parts and moving parts were actually suggested quite a lot in some of the earlier videos they did, so hopefully they took that feedback to heart, or maybe they were planned all along, who knows. Now here's one that's more in line with the drone building side of things, and that is a part. But not just any part, this is a tractor beam part. So it's like a weapon, but not. Presumably this is not going to deal any damage. Maybe it can be used on drones, but they didn't really express that. What they did say it could do, or at least if they add this, what it will be doing is you can equip it to your drone and you can use it to interact with the crates, for example. Any dynamic part. So you can pull them or presumably push them, or maybe you would need a push tractor beam and a pull tractor beam. Maybe it's not an all-in-one thing. Who knows? So that would be pretty cool. You could maybe stack boxes, making yourself a little shield that you could use to defend your team. Actually, that's a really awesome idea. Huh. I would honestly wow, that's a really cool idea, actually. I don't know how viable that would be in the actual game, just because it seems like a really fast-paced game and not really a sort of sitting in one spot too long, camping it out kind of game. So maybe that kind of defensive structuring might not be the best. Maybe you should spend your time elsewhere. But nonetheless, it would be pretty cool, especially if there are a lot of hidden passageways around the map that you need to move things out of the way for. It would be a lot quicker if you had the tractor beam than trying to push it out of the way and wasting your ammo. Although there's not really going to be ammo in the game, it looks like. What it's most likely going to be is a heat system and a power system. So you don't want to waste your power, and you don't want to build up too many heat trying to move this box out of the way. And you certainly don't want to crash into it either, which is another option for moving things. So yeah, it sounds like a really cool part, but how useful will it be? I don't know. But I could see it being really, really, really awesome in custom games. Maybe like a sports thing. They have talked about that, by the way. They have talked about like a sports physics based game mode. Hopefully at some point we will get more information about that. But yeah, another thing you could use this tractor beam for is for physics-based puzzles, which could be another custom game mode, or you could incorporate these puzzles into your map somehow. In order for you to get like a special advantage for your team, you need to complete this puzzle type thing. Get to the end of it and press a switch, and then your team might have a tunnel open up from their spawn in order to get to the enemy team's spawn a bit faster. Maybe something like that. I don't know. There are just so many amazing options when it comes to building a map. It's going to be pretty awesome. I'm really looking forward to what kind of weird and wacky creations people make. Now, I know I've made this point throughout the video, but there's something I do need to add here. Obviously, you can shoot dynamic objects with your weapon or hit them with your drone, and they will move aside. But in the trailer, I'm sure you've noticed that some of the really large objects don't seem to have the proper weight they should have. This most likely is because the footage we're seeing is pre-alpha, so that might factor into it a little bit. But there are obviously some other parts that definitely are weighted correctly, like the cement tunnels we see. They didn't specifically say that in the video, that they're sort of still working on these parts. But they did say that these things are sort of used for testing, so that kind of hints at the fact that they're not finalized just yet, at least when it comes to their proper weight and all that. The last thing I do want to cover is the shotgun weapon that we've been seeing throughout the trailer. Now, some people have been saying that this is just a straight-up shotgun, but it certainly doesn't look like your typical video gamey shotgun. At least when I think of a video game shotgun, I think of more of like a double-barreled type thing where it's really slow fire and a really close range. This weapon almost looks more like a scatter shot type weapon, or I guess more of a realistic shotgun. I guess you could say, but that's boring. Scattershot sounds more fun. Anyways, it seems like this thing has a pretty high rate of fire, as well as a fairly tight spread. And it seems like it will be able to travel fairly far, but maybe it has some sort of damage drop-off. We don't know. Additionally, I would assume this thing has a fairly high impact, but I could be wrong on that. When I say impact, of course, I mean the ability to push objects. Obviously, though, this thing is being shown off in pre-alpha, so for all we know, this could just be a test weapon. Maybe their balance is not quite final on it. Maybe they'll lower the fire rate, maybe they'll increase the fire rate, who knows? And for those who have yet to watch the official trailer for this, at the end of it, you've been seeing the preview for the next video that they're planning on releasing, and that is for the dynamic weather system. Basically, it allows you to change the weather of your map, time of day, etc., etc. Temperature as well, so you can have snow if you want to. Of course, though, this is an Earth map, so you can't get super crazy cold, and you can't get super boiling hot. You would have to go to another planet for that. But obviously, I will go into more detail on dynamic weather when the next video is released. So stay tuned for that, and make sure you check out the official video down in the description below, and subscribe to their official YouTube channel. The more subscribers they have, the faster they will release the Kickstarter. And with that, I will bring this video to a close. I thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know down below what you thought of this trailer, and basically anything that I've talked about. Give your 2 cents on anything, I would love to hear it. So yeah, that brings the video to a close. I, of course, have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.